Hey everybody, this is Sabre, your bougie girlfriend, and we are still in our Retire to Relocate series, and we're talking today about language. How important is it to know the language of the country that you're moving to? Now, I have lived in two different countries where I did not know the language. Both of those countries had other languages, and not just one, but they had hundreds of other languages that were spoken in their country. So there was no predominant language that you could learn, and so you could go throughout the entire country and actually know that language. But what I did learn is that in different regions, different languages were dominant. So for instance, if you were in Nigeria, if you were in the northern, you needed to know Hausa. All the Yoruba that you knew wasn't going to really help you. And so that's what you want to understand, language. Now, how important is language? Do they speak English also? Well, in some countries you will find that, yeah, they speak English and they speak whatever their native language is. And in all the countries I've lived in, yes, people also spoke English. But how does that affect you on your everyday life? So think about this. It's not only do they speak English, but do they speak American English? Because English is not the same in every country that you go. In South Africa, they do also speak English, and they speak Afrikaans. In the UK, of course, they speak English, but they also speak British English, which means that someone may ask you, where is the loo? Because they want to go to the bathroom, or they want to go to the toilet. And do you know the toilet and the bathroom are not the same rooms? So that's why you also want to understand the language of the country that you're going into. And so language also is going to affect your social life. It's going to affect your business life, and it will affect your work life. If you do not know the language of that particular country that you're going into, it's going to make it very difficult for you to do business, because you are not able to communicate effectively with the people that you want to do business with. And I absolutely know that English is the business language of the world, but there is something about speaking in someone's native tongue that builds a connection in a relationship. So think about that when you're talking about going to another country. Also, when you're talking about understanding the language and not having the ability to communicate in that language, it also reduces the amount of services that you can get, that sometimes you may get from some domestic staff if you're not able to communicate in the local language. I think about also when you go for worship, depending on what your faith is, if you don't speak the language, they're pretty much going to have that language in the local language. So we were able to find churches that spoke English, but you know what was really interesting in one of the countries we live in, pretty much the whole service was in English, but it never fails. At least somebody would stand up and start singing a song in their native language. And once that happens, that's it. For the rest of the worship service, you are out. You can just sit down, because they're going to be doing that for the rest of the service. Now, that doesn't always happen, but it could happen. And that's why you want to understand what is the language and how many people, what's the population of that country that actually speaks English. And so if you plan on learning a language, that is great. But if you are just a beginner and you haven't even started, you're going to need to be able to find yourself some immersion. I always recommend find some way to at least get some of the basic words. Then people will also try to speak English to you. I remember when one of the countries I was working in, I never learned the full language, but I did learn some greetings. I learned a couple of sayings. And when I would greet some of my coworkers and I would start some of my sessions in their local language, it actually would just change things. They would change the atmosphere and the culture. People were a lot warmer to you. Also understanding that even when I'm speaking English and they understand English, my tone, my diction, the way I say words, how I put words together also is very confusing. So you want to think about that when you're talking about a country you're going to move into. Do you know the language? Do you have the ability to learn the language? How much of that language do you know? And how many people in that country speak English? So even when you don't know the language, you can still go food shopping. You still got to go to the supermarket. You still got to buy furniture. You still got to pay your electric bill. You still got to go to the bank. All these things are going to be important, especially if you do not know the language. You will find yourself with translators, paying them to do services that you should be able to do yourself simply because you don't know the language. I also found myself have a really difficult time with domestic staff because I only could get domestic staff that who understood English. Well, that also limited me in getting some staff. So you also want to think about that, about acquiring the language and finding out what the predominant language is. Until now, have a great day, but most of all, make sure you're living an elevated life.